I represent the 32nd District, which is the eastern part of Loudoun County.
Hi, my name is Dana Crowe. I represent the 13th District, which is the city of Manassas Park, and the western Prince William County portions of Haymarket, Gainesville, and Manassas. And I will also note that the screen here says Tuesdays with Carrie, as in our Fridays with Maury, I suppose. Nice.
Delegate Terry Alston, I represent the 19th House District, which is Allegheny County, Boston County, parts of Bedford County.
Les Adams, the 16th House District, is Pennsylvania, Henry, and Martinsville City.
I'm Scott White, representing the 97th District, as a portion of Hanover, all of New Kent, and a majority of King William County.
All right, well, thank you all for being here today. First up on the docket, we do have Delegate Austin, if you would like to speak to your bill, then we'll take the appropriate action.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, thank you, and members of the committee. In this business, we all learn from our mistakes, and one of my mistakes this year was submitting this bill. I learned very quickly that this bill was not looked upon very favorably by the trucking industry. But I am going to ask that the bill be struck today, stricken from the docket. But before I do that, I would like to say that I appreciate Dale Bennett working with me to find a solution. The genesis of this bill came from a situation on Interstate 81 where the interstate was closed for 9 hours. And we had trucks everywhere. And so I thought by submitting this bill, we would benefit the trucking industry and enlighten them into the routes that were favorable and acceptable to truck travel. But as I quickly learned, that was not something that they desired, nor would it serve the benefit and need that I wanted. So I'm going to ask that we strike that bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Austin. Do I hear a motion to strike?
Motion to strike.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. This is a recording vote, so please record your vote when it appears on your electronic board. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so I see Delegate Golba. Patrons are here. Oh, Robinson. Okay. All right, that's good to know he's here.
Do we have an
Okay.
extra chair for vacation?
That would be great. Do you want to pull for that?
I'm also happy to stand.
I know it's.
My eyesight's not really good, so actually.
But yeah, go ahead. We'll be flexible on whether you stand or sit in our cozy room here. All right, Delegate Golba.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is House Bill 511, and I never like to use the word simply, so I'll try to avoid that. But what it does, it allows all of our state agencies to establish fee-based electric vehicle charging stations at their discretion. For those of you who've been around a couple of years, this might look a little familiar. So some really quick history, I promise. One of the challenges with electric vehicles is making sure that there's a charging infrastructure available, so a person feels comfortable that if they buy an electric vehicle, there's going to be some place that they're able to charge it other than their home. And one of the early impediments that we identified was that if you wanted to sell electricity in Virginia, that makes you a public utility, and you would be regulated by the State Corporation Commission. So that was clearly a big impediment to anybody ever wanting to establish a fee-based charging system. And so you can give away electricity, but clearly that's not a sustainable model with respect to electric vehicles. So back in 2011, this is actually under the McDonnell administration, the General Assembly passed legislation allowing for private businesses to sell electricity to electric vehicle charging stations and not be considered a public utility. Over the years, it became kind of abundantly clear that the public sector also played an important role in this infrastructure, since a lot of people use these public areas to go ahead and park or wait for various services. And so over time, we brought into the legislation to include public schools, local governments, public colleges and universities, state parks, and then last year we included DGS, VDOT, and DMV. And so that only leaves a handful of state agencies that actually cannot do this now. And so that's what this does. It basically cleans up the code, gets rid of the Christmas tree that we had created before, and just allows simply for all state agencies to be able to establish electric vehicle charging stations. And so I know there's a couple of groups here that have long supported this concept. Dominion has been very supportive of this concept and working with me in years past. I do know that there was some concern from our gasoline marketers and convenience store marketers, and make them feel a little bit more comfortable, I would consider a friendly amendment if we restored some language at the very beginning that said, when you offer this, it has to be offered at a competitive market rate. Because the idea isn't to go ahead and undercut competition, you want to be able to go ahead and charge it for that. So, Madam Chair, I'm happy to take any questions, but that's the bill.
Delegate, do you intend to move a line amendment, or do you want to hear the discussion with the committee before making?
Unless the bill is in jeopardy, I'd be
Okay.
happy to go ahead and have somebody move that line amendment.
Okay, so delegate has, do you have a question about the line amendment?
I do,
Delegate Rowland?
thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would just basically ask if we could find out basically on which line number in particular, and where, basically like which line number, and if we can get some exact language so that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion.
So, Madam Chair, that would be, starting on line 17 and going to line 20, it would simply be restoring that struck out language. So it's
Okay.
basically saying if the electric vehicle charging services are offered at prevailing market rates, for the purpose of this section, prevailing market rates means rates include actual taxes and are similar to those generally available to consumers in competitive areas for the same services. So it doesn't micromanage it, but it just makes sure that when you're charging these fees, that they're somewhat in line and that they paid attention to what the market is in that area.
Okay, I think the council about the line amendment that you would have reported if you were to report the line amendment, or do you?
Yes, Madam Chair and Delegate Bova, the line amendment would start after the words agency controls on line 17, and it would unstrike the language through line 20.
Delegate Rowland, do you have a
I move
motion?
the amendment.
Your second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the line amendment has been moved, so the bill's before us.
I think with that, we have peace in the valley. if I understand correctly.
Okay, are there any questions from the delegate? Delegate Reed?
Yes. Delegate Bova, just as a matter of practice, how is this actually done? Because you say that we're getting rid of the Christmas tree and we're making it so that any state agency can do it. I'm just curious, especially as you talk about this market rate, is this being done where the state agency is putting in the infrastructure, or are they contracting with someone else? And then I would assume that if they're contracting with a vendor, they would be putting it in at market rates anyway.
I think you answered kind of the question, but I would be happy to have some of the industry folks who will tell you exactly how that process works.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alexander McCauley, I represent EVgo, which is a electric vehicle charging station operator. And we actually partner with DEQ and are installing high-speed electric vehicle charging stations using some of the Dieselgate money that the state received. And to answer your question, Delegate Reed, what we would expect is there would be contractors of the agencies, but under the language of the bill, the agency itself could do it, but, we would expect them to contract with EVgo or any of the other companies like that to offer to install and operate the station.
And
Delegate Reed, do you have a
yes,
follow-up?
please. And which class of charging is normally being installed? Is it 2 or the high-speed 3?
I think for a lot of these, they're gonna be the level 2 chargers, and, there are lots of those already at some of the state parks and some of the community colleges and school boards and so forth. Over time, I think we would get the DC fast chargers.
Delegate Rowland?
Madam Chair, I would ask the patron, if he could also, just basically kind of go through the Christmas tree list of, we are striking out the Department of Conservation, or like sections that specifically delineate the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Chancellor of the Virginia Community College System, the Department of General Services, the Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Transportation, and what we're looking at here is basically on line 47, any agency as defined in 2.2 through 128. I think the patron had said earlier that almost every state agency, I was basically wondering if there are state agencies that are being specifically left out, because I don't have 2.2-128 in front of my face right now.
Sure, and so this is very specific, so it's the ways, so the ones that aren't touched by this are the public schools and local governments, because that's actually separate sections of the code, but anything that is a state agency, so as you mentioned, colleges and universities, state parks, DGS, VDOT, and DNP, those are all add-ins, and so they were particular enabling authority. And so this would now just say, hey, if you were an executive state agency. And so I'll give you an example. So let's say you go to the ABC store, and you wanna, and the ABC wants to go ahead and offer something like that, you can go ahead and plug in. But, again, it's just a matter of not micromanaging, which state agency is gonna be able to do this. These are our targets of opportunity, for where people might need to go ahead and charge up. And so this just makes that possible.
Madam Chair, follow?
Delegate Rome.
Madam Chair, I would ask the delegate if any ABC store, running a electric charging station for a car would be in the best interest of the Commonwealth.
Neither here nor there. I've been caught by constituents coming out of ABC stores with boxes of bottles and stuff.
Unopened, of course.
Unopened, of course, and only the classiest and stuff.
Delegate Reed.
Madam Chair, Delegate Bova, just one additional question. So I just want to confirm again that we're not having state agencies get into the business of actually competing against EVgo, Electrify America, and those type of things. This is not an unintended consequence of this bill.
No, this is, Madam Chair, it's a partnership and making sure that that partnership can continue to expand.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee for the patron? Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this bill?
Alexander McCauley for EVgo, and we support the bill.
Harry Godfrey, Virginia Advanced Energy Clinic, we support it.
Anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill?
Madam Chair, motion, this report?
Second.
Madam Chair, move to
As
report.
As
amended.
amended? Okay, moved and seconded to report as amended. Clerk will open the roll, please record your vote. Motion passes 6-1. Thank you, Delegate Bova.
Very much.
All right, Delegate Robinson, I see you now. I see your block, I'm sorry.
I am
I actually need. Yes, Delegate.
So there's a substitute for the bill, that we worked through. And my copy passed out, explain it, a substitute fee. Last year when I brought forward the bill to allow motorcycles to have lights on the side so they could be better seen and one of the things that I found when I was going through it, researching it, was candle powers is an obsolete term and is not used any longer. So we decided that we would come back this year and put the word lumens in, and out of respect for Captain Maxey and the state police, they requested that we leave candle powers still in the code, even though it's an obsolete term, it's not used anymore. So the substitute just says, it has the candle power language still in place, or the lumens is now added, and we calculated the equivalent of lumens to candle powers, and that's why the number of lumens is on there, and that is the bill in total.
All right, so we've heard the substitute. Do we have a motion to adopt the substitute?
Second.
All right, so moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the substitute is before us. Delegate, would you like to add anything more, or that the substitute pretty much explains your bill? Is there anything more you'd like to say
No,
before we
that
open
pretty
for
much,
questions?
that's a clarification of substitute, and that's why I brought it forward,
All right.
just to kind of clean the code up.
All right, well, before we have a motion to report, are there any questions from the committee for the patron?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Delegate Reed?
So I'm just amazed, 314.25 lumens, and the state police or whoever will be able to make that distinction down to the 0.25 lumen?
It's actually,
Delegate Robinson?
thank you, Madam Chairman, I think it's not so much for them to calculate it out at the time, but for people who are purchasing, will know what their limitations are, so it gives the public a little more information. And then if it would, I guess, end up in court for some reason, they thought someone was right, then they would be able to use light meters or something to figure that out.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this bill?
Matt Danielson, Virginia Coalition of Motorcyclists. We support the bill. Our members now, when they shop for lights, can actually know when they're on the internet that what they're buying meets with code, so.
Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone here to oppose this bill? Do we have a motion?
I have a motion to light him if you got him, and move the substitute, to report the substitute.
All right, we have a motion to report the substitute. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, clerk will open the roll. Please record your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, delegate.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Thank you, committee.
Okay, delegate Key.
Roxanne, be careful when your horse and buggy will move back.
I had some more statistics, but I figured there's lots of things to be talked about.
Should I sit or stand?
Whichever
Yes,
is
it's
preference.
four. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I appreciate your time. I have House Bill 465, and let me, this is about e-scooters, and before I explain what the bill does, let me just make sure I clarify for the record. I drafted this bill by myself, on my own, based on my own thinking about this, and no county, town, city, anywhere in Virginia asked me to do this, nor did any of our private sector partners who provide the e-scooter services ask me to do this. At the same time, I did consult with as many of those stakeholders as possible to let them know this is what I'm working on and my reasons behind this. And so let me start by telling you what the current law is, and I'm sure many of you know, especially those of you who worked on this last year. You might recall, 2019 session, we had a bill that passed unanimously to create the ability for e-scooters to be provided as a commercial service, not just for somebody to ride on their own, but as a commercial service in Virginia, as long as they comply with certain kinds of rules and regulations that counties and towns and cities will adopt. And that bill, which our former colleague Todd Pridden did, passed unanimously, which he deserves a standing ovation for. Anyway.
That's such an inside joke.
I'm gonna use that when I go to the Senate. Anyway, so, and I support the bill.
They won't
They won't
He doesn't get the same level of respect.
So the bill passed unanimously, and many of our counties and towns and cities have worked diligently to get the ordinances done by this past January, a couple weeks ago. I have participated in some of the rulemaking and the stakeholder conversations in my county and Fairfax County, and I've met with attorneys as well as our county officials and staff, as well as a number of board supervisors. And as everybody was working eagerly towards meeting the deadline, a number of questions came up about best practices. I'm sure many of you have heard from the constituents and or from the press, the situation where people are leaving scooters on sidewalks, possibly blocking streets and such. So for as many people who love e-scooters, and I'm one of them, there are many people that don't like them, and they think that they're just not appropriate at this time. And it's not just Virginia. Nationally, this conversation is happening in major big cities. And so what we wanted to do was to, number one, give all of us in Virginia just a little bit more time to go back and revisit this issue if you want to revisit it. And then number two, as we learn from other states and other counties that are experiencing this, we try to find the best information possible so that our localities can adapt to this. So my bill has 4 components to this, and I just want to walk through really quickly with you, because I think if you understand where I'm coming from on this, I think you'll appreciate why this bill may be necessary. First, we had a deadline of January 1 of 2020. I'd like to ask that we add another 10 months. I mean, I just kind of picked October as the random date. It could have been January next year, but then I just thought, let's try to finish it in 2020. So October 1 instead of January 1. Second thing that the bill does is it clarifies that any local county or towns or cities like my county, which has already adopted ordinances to address this issue, those ordinances stay in effect. There's nothing that I do that changes that in any way. However, they can also go back if they want to, revisit some of that, maybe make some amendments, make some tweaks based on some input that they've had since January. This gives them another few months to do that if they want to do that. For those towns and cities and counties that did not comply in time because either they ran out of time or they weren't sure if this is what they wanted to do, now they have another opportunity if they want to adopt it, again, local option, and they now have until October to do so. Third thing is for our private sector partners, those who have been diligent in trying to work with localities, we don't want to affect anything they've already done. If they've already entered the marketplace, let them stay and work in that field. If they haven't yet, some localities that may not have adopted rules, we want them to understand that there may be some localities that may adopt rules, and so we want to clarify that even if you entered a marketplace where there's no local rules, if that locality ends up adopting rules in the future, they obviously have to comply with that, because that's only fair that they live by the same rules. And then the final thing I did, and this is again, just my own idea, I added an emergency clause, and the reason is, if we're gonna ask our counties if they want to take another look at this, we can't have this become law in July and tell them they have until October, so I thought, the sooner we can get the word out that, hey, for those counties that, or towns and cities, if they wanna do it, you should know that this is something that's gonna become law this year. So that's really what the bill does. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I haven't asked anybody in the audience to speak for or against it, but there may be interested parties, so.
We'll find out. Any questions from the committee for the patron? Delegate Murphy?
Have you checked with the local supervisors?
Yes, ma'am.
Delegate Keen?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'll answer my colleague from Fairfax County by saying that, about half of the board members changed this year, so I talked to some of them along the way. But most of the county board members who participated in their own rulemaking on the county board, felt, and I can't speak for the county, and the county supervisor, but some of them told me that they were a little bit rushed in making these decisions, that they obviously wanted to do it, but they didn't feel that they had as much information as they would have, had to have a little more time to think about what other states are doing. So just on a private conversation, that's what they told me. Publicly, they all obviously supported the ordinance that we have in place.
Delegate Reed?
So thank you, Madam Chair. So, Delegate Keen, am I to understand that the code as it's currently written is saying that if you don't put an ordinance in place by January the 1st, 2020, then people can just come and put scooters anywhere? It's as if you've kind of taken a pass on regulating that. Is that what is the current law that we passed last year?
Madam Chair, I'd answer Delegate Reed by saying that's exactly how the code section was written, but now keep in mind, there are two groups of people that were affected with this rules, not my bill, but the law last year. One are individuals, private citizens like you and I. We could ride our scooters anywhere we want, anywhere in Virginia, without this rule, as long as we comply with the speed limit, stuff like that. Number two, those companies that want to offer it for commercial purposes, you know, those companies, at least a half a dozen companies that are doing that, if they want to offer it as a business matter, they would need to comply with the new business rules that the locality would adopt. And so that's the part that my bill would affect. So if you're a regular person, you do what you want as long as you comply. For the business folks, if you knew that by January 1, your local government did not adopt regulations or ordinances, that company could have actually gone in and started offering services without any licensing or regulatory requirement at that time. Now, my understanding is that not many companies are in that position now, because this literally just happened, and that's one of the reasons why I let them know several months ago when I started thinking about this, that I'm thinking about doing legislation. And in a good faith effort, all of us said, all of the groups I talked to said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea to give us a few months to get this right. We'd rather get this right so that the court of public opinion, as well as our public safety, is done in the right way, as opposed to rushing in to meet a deadline and then find out that perhaps the law's changed.
Any other questions for the patron from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience that's here to speak in favor of this bill?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Ryan O'Toole here today on behalf of Lime, Virginia's largest shared mobility operator. We thank Delegate Keem for his work on the bill. We certainly support the approach and support the bill.
There you go. Anyone else here to speak for the bill? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill? All right, what is the pleasure of the committee? Second. I heard a motion and a second, so please record your vote. Motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members, I appreciate your time.
All right, Delegate Carr.
Proper passing, following local traffic laws, obeying posted speed limits, and other state and local ordinances. Similar laws have passed in 23 states states, including Maryland, Ohio, and Tennessee. Changes to the code would define an electric-assisted bicycle as a device with 2 or 3 wheels, which has a saddle and fully operative pedals for human propulsion, and an electric motor having a power output of not more than 750 watts. 3 classes of e-bikes would be established. In the interest of safety, local governments would be allowed to restrict, regulate, or prohibit the use of e-bikes in parks, on paths, and trails. The e-bike class model allows local agencies to permit e-bikes on paths or bikeways where they are traditionally not allowed, if the alternative route is considered hazardous. Howard Bishop from McGuire Woods is available to speak in more depth and answer any questions.
All right. Are there any questions for the patron, Delegate Reed?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Delegate Parks, is the definition that you're using in here as far as the class 1, 2, and 3, is this an industry standard definition that is used and recognized?
Yes,
across
and the ones across the states, in fact, I'll let, Howard Bishop speak on
Madam
that.
Chair, Tyler Bishop on behalf of Harley Davidson, which is a member of an advocacy group, People for Bikes. And we have with us Todd Ketch, who is an e-bike dealer from the city of Alexandria. And to his right is John Zott, who's an e-bike rider in Arlington, and they know much more about these e-bikes than I do. And Todd may be able to answer any further questions.
Yeah, Madam Chair, so yes, that would be an industry standard definition. We adopted as an industry that set the 3-class definition so that we could have a unified, consistent definition across states. So that's part of a model set of legislation that's been pursued in the 23 states that the delegate mentioned, as well as others that we're trying to pursue now, including Virginia.
Delegate Murphy?
Are people required today to wear helmets on all of these bikes already?
So, Madam Chair, so just in response, yes, sorry. No, they're not required to wear, helmets. So for kids that are 14 and under, they would be required to wear helmets. And now with the new definitions for class 3, so that's a specific class of bike that could be up to 28 miles an hour with a pedal assist function, those would require the use of an appropriate helmet. For all ages.
Questions?
Madam Chair,
Delegate
speaking to the bill.
Delegate Roll?
Yes, so I just want to note that we have in on lines 433, or beginning on line 43, it says, G, each operator and passenger of a class 3 electric power-assisted bicycle shall wear a properly fitted and fastened bicycle helmet that meets the current standards provided by either the U.S. Consumer Products Safety Commission or the American Society for Testing and Materials International. So, just to refer back to Delegate Murphy's comment, that would be the part regarding safety on there. And I would also note, Madam Chair, that on page, so it's lines 413, 414. It also notes that it says all class 3 power-assisted bicycles shall be equipped with a speedometer to display the speed of the bicycle is traveling miles per hour. Because at first I was kind of wondering, well, what bicycle really has just how fast you're going on it, but this would be prescriptive language, especially since the shall.
Thank you, Delegate Roll. Are there any questions, Delegate Adams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to this new code section, which would be 46.2-4.1, it was mentioned that at least with regard to the classes, in response to Delegate Reed's question, it was mentioned that that's industry standard. Is this new code section standard language that has been adopted in other states?
Yes. Tyler Bishop, Madam Chair. Delegate, this legislation is modeled after that which is passed in 23 states and is currently being either introduced or considered in a number of other states.
Any other questions from the committee? Is there anyone else here to speak on behalf of this bill? Anyone else in favor?
Sure, so I'll just, if you don't mind, if I could take just a second, Madam Chair. So, good afternoon, so, I wanna thank, the chair as well as the members of the subcommittee for providing this opportunity for us to offer some testimony on HB 543. So again, my name is Todd Ketch. I live in Woodbridge and I'm a owner of Pedigo Electric Bikes in Alexandria, Virginia. It's an electric bike retailer location. I wanted to let you all know that consumer interest in the use of electric power assist bicycles is growing very, very rapidly, as you all know, in this country and around the world. And Pedigo is the #1 brand of electric bikes in the United States. So I'm here to express my strong support for HB 543, as it's going to establish a clear and consistent definition for electric power assisted bicycles across Virginia, and with the growing number of states that have approved similar policies. This will have many direct benefits for our residents and will increase tourism opportunities as visitors bring and use electric assist bikes to explore this beautiful state. This legislation is also gonna have a significant positive impact for my business and others across Virginia. It's gonna provide clear access for people to ride electric power assisted bicycles on roadways, pathways, and other appropriate trails. Will open up significant opportunities to increase our business revenue from the sale of bike accessories and rentals and tours, which will also result in revenue for the state. The benefits will also spread to other businesses, owners, and renters who use these electric assist bikes to more easily explore different areas, attractions, and businesses that they wouldn't necessarily venture to on foot, a conventional bicycle or in a car. This also creates the potential for increased employment opportunities at bike shops for salespeople, service technicians, and tour leaders. Electric power assist bikes make it possible for people of all ages and abilities to get out of their cars and experience the physical, mental, and emotional health benefits that can come from riding a bike to explore the paths and parks in their local communities, commute to work, visit businesses, restaurants, or other destinations. There's actually a recent study done in Norway that found electric power assisted bikes provide great exercise, as people actually exert themselves 95% of the time while they are riding. We also know that these people on these bikes tend to ride them more often, for longer duration, and for other distances than they would on a conventional bike. The health benefits and related healthcare cost savings from increased physical activity are pretty well established. The reduction in vehicle emissions is also a major benefit, with more people riding electric assist bikes as a replacement for a car as a primary transportation. This is great for the environment as well as for the health of residents and visitors to our state. So clearly differentiating the 3 classes of electric power assist bicycles from mopeds and motorcycles and other motor vehicles is very important to realizing the benefits for consumers, businesses, and the state. So we'll be joining those 23 other states that have already passed similar policies. I urge you to support passage of this important legislation so that Virginia can lead in the adoption of this technology to the great benefit of the consumers and businesses across the Commonwealth. And I'll just close by saying, I just wanted to share with you a quick review that I had from one of my customers who said, we're in our 60s and I have a dicey knee, but we rented the e-bikes yesterday and loved them. Rode 20 miles in 2 hours and was like pedaling through air, no pain and no strain. If you want to remember the exhilarating feeling of being 13 and zipping along on your bike, try these out. So that's a beautiful thing. It gets people back on their bikes who maybe thought they weren't going to be able to do it again. So I thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition?
Support? Madam Chair,
One moment, we had a request to speak by Delegate Reed, and then I think Delegate Adams may also
Yes.
have a question. So Delegate Reed, I saw your hand, and then Delegate Adams.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I just actually had one additional question, and I was hoping that someone could give me a simple answer about what the distinction is between Class 1 and Class 2, because I see that they both are at 20 miles per hour, and I'm trying to understand what the nuance is between Class 1 and Class 2.
Sure, I can respond to that. So I'll go straight to the delegate's question. So a Class 1 e-bike and a Class 2 e-bike have exactly the same limitation in terms of top speed of 20 miles per hour and maximum power of no more than 750 watts on the motor. The difference is a Class 1 can be powered only by the pedal assist function. So that means it only provides power from the motor when you pedal it. Right? On a Class 2, it can have the ability to have the motor activated without actually having to pedal it, using a throttle or a thumb assist or something like that. Many of your Class 2 bikes actually have both functions on them, so that which makes it important for a lot of people to be able to use that bike more effectively than they would with just the one function. But the speed is still the same and the power is the same.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Adams?
So question for staff on, or our council, with respect to the issue of helmets that was mentioned before. I mean, currently, there's no requirement for wearing a helmet for a bicycle, a non-electric bicycle, standard bicycle, is there?
Madam Chair, there is a requirement of, I don't know the code section off the top of my head, I could pull it up for you, but it's for people under 14 required to wear helmets.
And just as a follow-up to that, is there any concern with the language in this new section where it starts off with, saying that an electric power assisted bicycle is a vehicle to the same extent as a bicycle? And then, of course, you know, it has the requirement, it doesn't distinguish between the classes on the helmet. I think maybe it is not inconsistent because of the preparatory language at the beginning of subsection A that says, except as otherwise provided in this section. And I'm thinking maybe the language you're talking about is somewhere else in this section, or not.
Madam Chair, so that you're saying that this would conflict with the current section about bicycles and a helmet?
Is that a possible conflict, with, you know, on the one hand, you know, the opening of the new section we're talking about, saying, you know, this has all the rights and obligations as the laws for bicycles, but then clearly it has this extra duty that we don't have for bicycles.
Madam Chair, Delegate Adams, because this is the more specific and later in time legislation, this would rule over the existing helmet requirement. Also, because the existing helmet requirement applies to a smaller class of individuals, and this would create a larger requirement, but only for the class 3 electric bicycles, I do not believe that there is a conflict.
Delegate Murphy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question though. If these bicycles can go 25 miles an hour, should someone have to have a driver's license to operate?
This kind of came up in one discussion we had, but, human-powered bicycles can go as fast as 25, even faster, so they don't have a driver's license.
Is your follow-up question, Delegate Murphy?
Yes, thank you. But because they're motorized, does that change this in any way? I'm just curious.
Council,
Madam Chair, this would not change the current requirement of licensure, that you would not need a driver's license to operate an electric, an e-bike. Whether you want to impose that obligation is a policy decision, but it's not.
So get your own bill.
Delegate Reed?
So I'd just like to follow up on Delegate Adams' questions, and I just want to clarify here that currently, an adult does not have to wear a helmet if they choose not to for a bicycle if they are going 25, 28 miles an hour. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, and I have pulled up the code section, so Delegate Adams, if you want to look at that as well, it's 46.2-906.1. It actually creates a local option for local governing bodies to require individuals to wear a helmet while riding on a bicycle, electric personal assisted mobility device, which is a Segway, or an electric power assisted bicycle. So to go to Delegate Adams' point, that makes it even less of an issue because it's a local option, so it would be state law versus a local regulation. And I'm circling back.
And what I'm just kind of get, yes, thank you, Madam Chair, I'm just trying to get to kind of the bottom line is that are we saying to individuals who ride these vehicles, which as Delegate Carr has pointed out, would go the same speed as a potential bicycle, are we putting an additional responsibility on adults? I mean, I understand the 14 and below, but are we putting additional responsibility on adults to wear a helmet when maybe in a different section of the code, we've said that they can choose to or not choose to, or it's a local option? And I'm just trying to be sure that we avoid that conflict, or that we're putting any additional, like I said, any additional onus on an adult driver.
Madam Chair, that's correct, and this, it would apply to any rider of a class 3 e-bike would be required to wear a helmet, whereas under the current code, there is a local option to allow localities to require helmets for people under 14. So, that, currently there would not be a local ordinance or a state law requiring people to wear helmets.
Madam Chairman, this is a resident of Richmond, I didn't know that it was okay not to have on helmets, because always in Richmond, must be local ordinance, we have to have helmets.
Elliot Reed?
So, Elliot Carney, is that your intent in this legislation to override that local option and make it so that it is now, if you're riding an e-bike that's a class 3, that it's a state requirement to wear a helmet?
I thought about that being my intention, but certainly don't see any problem.
Madam Chair, as a point of, and again, these are policy decisions, I wanna make sure that we understand the, underlying law. 46.2, 915.2 requires, those riding or, operating mopeds to wear helmets. So we have this different standard for the moped versus the e-bike versus the bicycle.
Why did I ask the question?
Delegate Murphy?
How fast does a moped go?
That, Madam Chair, that is in the code. A moped is, it's a vehicle that has not more than 3 wheels and is not operating at speeds in excess of 35 miles per hour. If that same vehicle were to be operated more than 35 miles per hour, then it becomes a motorcycle.
So we have a moped 35 miles an hour requires a helmet. Now we're entertaining legislation that would require a helmet for a person-propelled electronic motor vehicle that is traveling potentially at 25 miles an hour.
28.
28, my apologies, 28 miles an hour. So that's a policy decision before us. Does, members of the committee have any additional questions they'd like to? Committee operates by motion. Second. Moved and seconded. Local roll, please report your vote. Motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Delegate Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee.
Last order of business is Delegate Reed has asked his bill, HB 717 to go back to today, and we'll hear that next week. That requires a motion and a voice vote, so I hear a motion to go back to today. Moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, it's the, final, end of our docket. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.